Hey everybody, welcome to our training today, Growing Through the Tough Stuff, Leading with Resilience. My name is Timothy Smith. Most of you know me as Tim the Trainer. Super excited for this training with you today. Now don't be fooled by the title, Leading with Resilience. Whether you're a director, assistant director, lead teacher, assistant teacher, does not matter what position you are in, you are leading. You're leading people, employees, children, families, communities, your own personal family. Don't be fooled by the title. This training is for you. We're going to talk about how to practice resiliency. And when you are faced with adversity, either in your school or in your classroom or at home, what techniques can you use to push through those difficult times? Super excited to share this with you. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started, let's go ahead and go over some training reminders. This topic has been approved by the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System. Most of y'all call this TechPads. And so if you are completing this training on our website, make sure that your personal TechPads workforce ID number is entered on your portal on timthetrainer.com. That way your training certificate will automatically be uploaded into your TechPads account. That only happens if your personal TechPads workforce ID number is entered on your portal before you complete the assessment. If you have any questions about the material that I'm going to go over with you today, there are a few different ways that you can reach out to me and interact with me. On my website, timthetrainer.com, up in the upper right-hand corner, you can send a direct message to me through our website. You can also call or you can email if you have any questions about the training material or if you need more information beyond the scope of the training. We are available for you and we can respond to you in a timely manner to get those questions answered. Also, just always like to give a friendly reminder that trainings must be completed in a reasonable amount of time. The best way I have found to define that is the total number of clock hours of training that you complete in a single day cannot exceed the total number of hours that you work in that day. Definitely, the total number of clock hours that you complete in a single day cannot exceed the number of hours that there are in a day. That should be common sense for you right there. But I want to make sure that you stay in compliance with child care regulations. We also want to avoid any type of wage and hour audit for your business. So make sure that your trainings are completed in a reasonable amount of time. That way you don't have any issues with regulatory agencies. So I got a couple of quotes that I wanted to share with you on this particular subject that I found really interesting when it comes to growing through that tough stuff, leading with resiliency. So the first one we have here is according to a study done by a workplace resource company, Bravely, 70% of employees are avoiding difficult conversations at work, and 53% of employees are handling toxic situations by ignoring them, which is resulting in declining employee engagement and organizational trust. Now, I kind of want you to think about that quote right there. And in your early education program, how many difficult conversations are you avoiding? Whether it be a conversation between a teacher and a director, a conversation between two co-workers, a conversation with a customer, meaning our parent right there. And, sometimes we feel like if we just ignore these difficult conversations, they will eventually go away. And here's the truth. They don't go away. They just manifest and become bigger, and they turn into other problems right there. And, toxic situations, especially in early education programs, you have to really look at this, whether it be a toxic situation or a toxic person that you're having to deal with. And you're probably going to hear me say this a couple of different times throughout this training. The way adults treat each other have a bigger impact on the children's development of self-regulation than how an adult treats the child. So that's something really important to remember when we talk about, growing through the tough stuff and leading with resiliency. This is not just an adult model. It's not just an adult situation that we have to push through. We have to look at the bigger picture here. And those toxic situations, those difficult conversations that you're ignoring is having a huge impact on the children that you care for. All right? We've got to have that culture of accountability, that culture of trust, so that we can push through these difficult times because it's having a huge impact on our children. Research has found that 70% of employees avoid difficult conversations with others, whether it's their peers, their managers, or their direct reports. This same research shows that avoiding challenging conversations takes an emotional toll. The culture suffers, and the environment can produce resentment, disrespect, and even grow toxic. And again, the adult state dictates the child state. So if 70% of your school family is avoiding difficult conversations with others, look at the impact this is having on the children in our classrooms, the impact that it's having on our customers, the impact that it's having on the community. This is big stuff right here, right? So we got to learn how to have these conversations. What you think? You ready for this? Let's talk about it. Here are the learning objectives that I have put together for this particular training. So we're going to talk about understanding what resilient leadership is and what it is not. Leaders are going to recognize that perspective and attitude shifts can open up growth opportunities in the face of significant challenges and obstacles. Hey, look, right now, we all have a lot of significant challenges and obstacles. So we have to be able to see things differently. We've got to shift that mindset right there. Children can't act differently until they are seen differently, right? Well, it's the same thing for the adults that we work with too, all right? Adults have to be seen different before they can act different. So you have to be willing to shift that attitude and shift that perspective. Are you willing? And then we're going to talk about some proven strategies and practices that support individual and team growth through challenging situations and circumstances and kind of guide you through their use. All right, so that's what I've got in store for our learning objectives. There's a lot of talk these days about resilient leadership. There are multiple books out there. You've got podcasts, you've got TED Talks, there's so much about resilient leadership. And that's fine and that's good and wonderful. You got to find the speaker, you got to find the content that calls out to you. So there's a lot of really good people out there that are talking about resilient leadership. I'm going to really kind of zone in on early education and, our preschools, our Montessori's, our after-school programs. And that's what we want to focus on for this particular training right here. If you're wanting some personal resilient leadership, I think everything that we talked about today is definitely going to be applicable to you, like I said at the beginning, but there are plenty of other resources out there to kind of help you out. All right. So basically, resilient leadership is the ability to guide others through change and uncertainty while remaining calm and in control. It's about composure, adult composure, right? Now, when you're in the classroom working with the children, we always focus on an adult first, child second model. You know, the adult has to remain composed before you can co-regulate a child. But from leadership, you know, it's really important that leadership also practice that composure, that self-control. This is the difference between reacting to a situation versus responding to a situation. Resilient leaders are able to adapt to new situations, learn from setbacks, and maintain a positive outlook. You know, and here's the truth on this one. Every single one of us, none of us would be where we're at today if it wasn't for the mistakes that we've made in the past. Okay? We learn from our mistakes. And when we talk about consequences, consequences is not going the time out, being placed on probation, having your salary reduced, getting a deficiency from child care licensing. Those are concrete consequences. But when we really grow is when we talk about the natural consequences. And natural consequences are those internal feelings, that internal growth that we have. It's looking at a setback, looking at a mistake, and instead of seeing that as failure, you see it as growth. All right? We're going to learn from this situation and we're going to move forward. And y'all, is that not what teaching is all about? Because everything we practice in the classroom is trial and error, right? We're going to practice a technique with a child. Whoop, that didn't work. All right, so you move on to the next technique and you practice that. And you keep practicing until you find the skill that the child is missing, right? And then you practice that over 2,000 times in context until the child has the skill, right? Maintaining that positive outlook, that optimistic outlook while doing this. That's what resilient leadership and resilient teaching is all about. Resilient leaders possess a high degree of emotional intelligence, enabling them to understand and manage both their own emotion and those of others. We have to be able to see the world from other people's point of view, right? We have to be able to understand the brain states and where the adult is at and where the child is at. Are you in the higher centers of your brain? And when you are in the higher centers of your brain, this is when we can solve problems, we can meet the needs of others, we can learn, we can grow, right? Or is the world not going your way and you are in your limbic system, which is your emotional state, where at that point the brain is just seeking understanding? When the brain is seeking understanding, it automatically divides the world into us and them. You become very selfish at that moment. You only care about yourself. That's why, again, we need understanding, that curiosity, the why, that part of it. Or when someone pushes our buttons and we get triggered, are we in our brainstem, the survival part of our brain, where, the only skills we have at this point is to fight or flee, right? And that's what we can do. No learning can take place. We cannot meet the needs of others. We cannot cooperate. And we have to be aware of that, okay? When we talk about resilient leadership, where is the adult at? Where is the other person you're working with? Again, whether it be a coworker, a parent, a manager, or a child, we got to be able to recognize where each person is at so that we can properly communicate and meet their needs. The heightened emotional awareness fosters effective communication and it builds strong relationships within the organizational framework. All right? We have to be aware of each other. You've got to build that culture of compassion, that culture of caring, right? Supporting and encouraging each other, okay? And even in the child care minimum standards, when you look at general responsibilities of personnel, when you are given the responsibility of a group of children and when counted in child staff ratio, you have to be fully aware of the child's emotional state, mental state, physical state, cognitive state. Like, it's the big picture right here. And that's one thing I really love about some of the most recent changes made to the child care minimum standards is we have to have that heightened awareness of the individual child, okay? So that we can decide the proper care and education that is needed for that particular child at that moment. Okay, y'all, that's good stuff right there. But we can even take it up a level to the adults that we work with as well. Now, let's kind of talk about handling conflict right here and what this kind of normally looks like in a situation. And again, I want you to pick a scenario that is best for you right now. What's going on in your life? What type of conflict are you having right now? Whether it's with a coworker, a manager, a customer, a child in your classroom, maybe your spouse, your own personal children, the electric company, whatever that conflict might be right here. And, and this is how we typically respond to conflict. This is how the brain is wired. So take a look at this. You've got conflict, right? And when the world is not going your way and you get triggered, right? The first thing the brain typically does is it goes into blame and attack mode, all right? Who can I blame for this conflict? Who can I attack for this conflict? And right now we got a lot of different resources for blame and attack. You can spread the word all across the internet, all through social media. People just love to blame and attack, right? Now we go back to a lot of our childhood, when most of us were growing up, the blame and attack was typically physically on another human, right? Or someone that was near you or someone that you loved, whether it be verbally or physically, that blame and attack came out. And that does still happen too, of course, these days. But now we've got all these other ways of going into blame and attack. Instead of looking at your role in the situation, I'm going to figure out who else is responsible for this, because it ain't me. Okay? I'm the victim here, right? I am just the victim. I'm going to blame and attack someone else. That's where our brain goes. And from blame and attack, we go to demand and act out. I'm going to demand some type of resolution. I'm going to demand that this conflict be solved my way. I'm going to act out by going on to social media and go into a Facebook neighborhood moms page and spread my garbage, or one of these, child care, preschool, blah, 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 Facebook pages, and throw my garbage out there, whatever it might be. Get on the phone, get on a group text message, but I'm going to demand and act out and just throw it all out there. And then you're just going to get exhausted from the demand and act out. So I just need this horrible feeling that's going on inside of my body to go away. So I'm going to start medicating, right? And that's going to be by, alcohol or, drug of choice. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, alcohol or illegal substances. I'm going to go get me a gallon of ice cream and I'm going to eat the entire gallon of ice cream. or I'm just going to go shopping, or I'm going to hop on Amazon and fill that cart up with a whole bunch of stuff that I don't need. So whatever it is that takes those negative, hurtful feelings out of your body, and you push it down, you bury it, you ignore it, right? And then I just pretend like it's going to go away. I avoid the situation, right? And then you just get stuck. Okay? You get stuck until the next conflict comes around. And when the next conflict comes around, okay, not only does the new conflict erupt like a volcano, but it's also bringing all of that other stuff that was unresolved out, right? And this is the cycle that we see ourselves going through, right? Let's be honest here, okay? Because when we're growing through the tough stuff, we have to kind of recognize, yep, this is my cycle. And some of you that are watching this might be shaking your head right now going, oh my gosh, the number of times I have gone through this complete cycle right here, okay, when dealing with those difficult situations. Now, okay, y'all didn't know you were coming to therapy today, right? That's exactly what this feels like as you're going through therapy. Now, all of that I just went through is done unconsciously, all right? It's the unconscious part of our brain right here. The blame, right? The Taylor Swift comes out in you. Look what you made me do. Look what you made me do, right? So it's all somebody else's situation, someone else's fault, right? Now, consciously, we have to shift that, okay? And you have to be able to say, I am triggered. I am angry. I am frustrated. I am sad, right? I'm confused, right? Whatever the feeling might be. Anytime you get triggered, you're always the last person to know, all right? Everyone around you is going to be aware of that trigger except for you. So when we talk about the steps to self-regulation, the steps that are needed to handle conflict productively, okay? Instead of going into blame and attack mode, you have to be able to say, stop, hit the internal pause button. I am triggered, okay? I am angry, all right? And that's the first step right there. Now, remember, those that you put in charge of your feelings, you put in charge of you. So if you say, that person made me angry, that coworker made me angry, that child made me angry, when you make those type of comments, you're putting that person, that child in charge of you. Okay? The only person that can make you angry is yourself. Okay? You got to be in control right here. I am triggered. I am angry. So then we go down to the demand and act out. You demand the world go your way. You start the name calling. You start the social media trashing. You start dragging that garbage through the mud. Okay? So let's shift. That willingness to do things differently comes in. All right? So step 2 right here, I'm going to calm. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to notice my internal cues, my nonverbal language. Stop, take a deep breath, and relax. And tell yourself, I am safe. I can handle this. I can help this person with their problem. I can help this child with their problem. All right? We can come up to it with a solution to this problem. All right? But you have to calm yourself at this point. You can't move forward with handling conflict until you recognize the need for calm. This is where the self-control comes in, the demonstrating competency, changing the state. All right? Am I emotional? Am I just trying to survive? And what do I need to do to get myself back to the higher centers of my brain? When we go on to the next one, instead of medicating, all right, where you medicate the distressing sensations through addiction, and again, that could be the comfort food. I'm going to go get me a giant meatloaf and mashed potato. I'm going to go get that gallon of ice cream, or maybe that bottle of wine, whatever it is. All right. Instead of trying to medicate and numb those feelings, we're going to own our feelings. All right. Identify and name the feeling. Shifting from I am angry to I feel angry. Own those feelings, y'all. Own those emotions. They are yours. They're nobody else's. They were all yours. All right? And it's okay. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel frustrated. All right? But this is where the opportunity for growth comes in. And you can't have growth. You can't, handle the conflict and grow through the tough stuff until you're able to own your feelings. Instead of burying your feelings in a life story or a life script, right? Painting yourself or others as villains or as victims, separating from others, right? We want to move to choosing, all right? You can relax, you can change your state, reframe the problem, focus on the expectation instead of the problem. See the situation differently by using positive intent. All right? It's that willingness to take the poopy glasses off and see things differently. All right? Using that positive intent right there. Reframing the problem. All right? This is a really powerful practice right here. You can use this in so many different situations. We sometimes call this pivoting, right? So you pivot to the expectation instead of focusing on the problem, right? That employee was late for their shift, and I had to cover their classroom until they showed up, which then threw my entire day off, okay? Instead of just going, oh, that teacher, something needs to happen to her. She never shows up to work on time. She's so selfish. All right? Pivot. I was hoping my coworker would show up on time so that I could get my day started. All right? So pivot to the expectation instead of the problem. Okay, then we can solve it. Instead of getting stuck in the situation, we're going to find a win-win solution. All right, what can we do to move forward right here? So you can see the difference here. The left side of this chart is unconscious. All of this stuff happens without us even knowing, but we got to shift it to the conscious part of our brain, the higher centers of our brain. This is how we grow through the tough stuff. This is how we handle conflict. All right? This is good stuff right here. It does take a lot of practice. So let's look at this differently. All right. I am triggered. Something happened. Okay. I calm. You find the active calming techniques that works best for you, whether it's going outside and walking in nature for 5 minutes. All right. Going and getting a glass of water. Singing a song, reading a journal or writing in a journal, whatever works best for you. Name your feeling. All right. choose to solve the problem effectively, and then solve the problem and get back to life. All right? Solve the problem and get back to life, get back to work. That's the goal right here. This is healthy conflict. All right? Hopefully that made sense to you right there. All right, let's kind of talk about these conversations that you tend to want to, avoid right here. And I'm going to give you some homework assignment that you are going to need to work through right here. Kind of going back to that resilient leadership, going back to handling conflict, reflecting on the unconscious actions that we have, and shifting that to the conscious behaviors. Let's take a look at this. When we talk about conversations, can you recall a time when you had a conversation and it did not go well? What kind of conversation was it? And go back and reflect on that. And again, avoid going into blame and attack. Okay, and instead of going into blame and attack, identify your trigger. What was said, what was done, that was the trigger. All right. Did you or the other person on the other side of that conversation, did they demand or act out? What did that look like? What was said, what was done? And let's flip that to, how could you have pressed that internal pause button and calm yourself so that you can respond to the situation instead of react from the situation? Okay, what was the feeling that you had? All right, so when you had this difficult conversation that did not go well, did you turn around and medicate yourself in some way? And then instead of doing that, how could we have named our feeling? All right. And then what could you have chosen to done to be able to move forward to solve the problem? So what happened? How could you do things differently? And when you do recall that time that you had that conversation and it did not go well, what did you learn from that? Okay, because again, every single conflict that you have is a learning opportunity. Okay, whether again it's in the classroom with a child, it's with a coworker, it's with a manager, it's a parent, there's always the opportunity to learn. That's what we focus on. The avoidance, all right? And let's own the avoidance right here, all right? It's your avoidance, okay? We got to own it. Do you avoid difficult conversations? What type of conversations do you avoid and why? I want y'all to write this down, okay? And this can be in a journal that is just for you, all right? You don't have to share this with anyone. That's kind of why I'm really, I like it that this training is being recorded and that you're probably going to be watching this individually, or if you are watching it in a group, you can kind of just have this moment to yourself. But I want you to be honest with yourself, okay? Do you avoid difficult conversations? And then let's categorize that. What type of conversations do you avoid? Okay, and I think you're going to find every single one of us, we have some particular types of conversations that we tend to want to avoid. I think one thing that you're going to see is that, like when it's your own personal children and there is some type of conflict with your own personal child, and someone else wants to bring that up. We don't like it. We don't like it when other people want to talk about our own personal children. And so we tend to want to avoid those conversations, when in reality, we probably should see the situation from other people's perspective, right? Doesn't make it easy, but there's definitely a need for it. And why? Because as a parent, that brings out some insecurities right there. That's just an example for you right there. But, what type of conversations do you avoid and why? Why do you think your team, why do you think your school family avoid difficult conversations? Is it a fear of disruption? Do you not have a culture of accountability? That culture of growth? Let's kind of drill down on that right there and have these open conversations with each other. And what is one difficult conversation that you need to have with your school family? Okay? And again, you got to be honest with this. Got to have that culture of accountability, and you can't be afraid of growth. And that's what it's all about. Now, again, let's go back to that model that I just shared with you on handling conflict and those 5 steps. Looking at the unconscious steps versus the conscious steps, okay? And if y'all need to print that out and have it in front of you whenever you bring up the difficult conversations within your team or your school family, that might be helpful, but this is how we grow, all right? Let's look at the mindset right here, all right? What we think impacts what we say and what we do. Changing our thinking about challenging conversations is our first step to get better, and it is essential. It is such an essential skill. So, how would you describe your mindset related to conversations you view as difficult? We got to dig into these mental models. Every single one of us, we have, mental models. We have negative bias, right? That are those false messages that we have in our brains. Anger is nothing but fear in disguise. And fear sends false messages to the brain. And we tend to write all of these false stories that are unconsciously up there in our brain. And when we deal with difficult situations, when the world is not going our way, when we get triggered, right, our brain goes straight to those false messages. Okay? So you've got to be aware of your mindset. And that's where changing your thinking about challenging conversations has to be the first step to getting better. Once again, it's about that willingness to see things different. All right? And shift the mindset. Instead of calling these conversations difficult, what else could you call them? How about, instead of calling these conversations difficult, let's call them opportunities for growth. Okay? Hey, coworker, can we please sit down and talk? I believe there's some opportunities for both of us to grow. All right? Doesn't that sound better than, hey, we need to have a difficult conversation? Okay? Hey, we need to talk. There's an opportunity for growth here. Okay, there you go. Just a couple of little quotes that I put down here for you. According to Very Well Mind, a mindset is a set of beliefs that shape how you make sense of the world and yourself. It influences how you feel, think, and behave in any situation. It means that you will believe impacts it means that what you believe impacts your outcomes in life and work. Y'all, belief is a powerful thing, all right? But I like to kind of take that one step up and not just what you believe, but what you know, all right? Kind of look at that in what you know rather than what you believe. Beliefs are just messages that you play over and over again in your head, okay? But what you know is what you know, right? Like, I know that I'm meant to be with this person. I know that I am meant to work in early education. right? So you kind of look at that. This Carol DeWick has found that our beliefs play a pivotal role in achieving the outcomes in our lives and work. Okay, so really cool stuff right there as well. And I'm a big person with transparency, y'all. I just believe life is too short to kind of play this game of hiding things and keeping things from others. Hey, we just gotta throw it out there. We gotta solve these problems and move on. We gotta grow and move on, because there's a whole world out there waiting for us to discover, right? So I am all about transparency, okay? And so I thought this was really good right here. You know what transparency means, right? It means to allow light to pass through something so objects behind can be directly seen, okay? I want you to know the truth so you can see what is behind the issue with your team and you can truly move forward together, okay? So talk about this with your school family as well. Why is transparency important in relationships? Okay? Why do we have to be able to see past, the problem? All right? See past those objects, that are behind. So look at that right there. How do you have transparent relationships? Or who do you have transparent relationships with? We do this with our spouse, we do this with our immediate family, but how comfortable are you to have that transparent relationship at work? Hey, it's the power of unity here. We are all in this together, and we want to be able to recognize that. Okay? How did you get to that point where you can be transparent with each other? All right. How have these relationships helped you grow? Well, y'all, this is where trust comes into play. And we've got to have trust in order to be transparent. So let's talk a little bit about trust. What are some things your team does to help build trust? And what are some things that your team does to break trust? And I encourage y'all, have this conversation together and be open and honest about it. All right? What helps build trust within your school family? What breaks it? When you're working in the classroom with children, okay, what type of behaviors builds trust? What type of behaviors destroys trust? All right. Now remember, the adult dictates their state to the child. So you can't sit here and talk about things that the children do and say that break trust. That's not fair to the children because they're just learning and developing. Y'all, when we talk about trust, the spotlight is on the adult. Okay? You can't go into blame and attack mode on a 3-year-old child when it comes to trust. They are simply learning and developing. The trust starts with the adult. And I know that might be hard for some of you to hear, but it is the truth. All right. What are some things that you do to build and break trust? And be honest with yourself right here. Because even as individuals, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. So some of us are really good at building trust in certain ways. But every single one of us, we all have behaviors that also break trust. All right? So, and again, this part of it you might want to do by yourself before you start sharing this with your team, your school family. This might be a internal journey for you at the beginning, but this is definitely something you want to look at and ask yourself. All right, there you go. And then how does having trust support effective conversations? Okay, when we talk about those opportunities for growth, all right, where does trust fall into that? Do you agree that trust has to be there first before you can handle conflict, before you can push through and grow? It's a big factor. Here are some other statistics that I thought were really good to share with you. Compared with people at low trust companies, people at high trust companies report 74% less stress. Sign me up for that, right? 106% more energy at work. That sounds good. 50% higher productivity. 13% fewer sick days. Yeah, absolutely. 76% more engagement. 29% more satisfaction with their lives. Now look at that one. 29% more satisfaction with their lives. All right. That's not just at work, that's at home too. And 40% less burnout. And this came from the Harvard Business Review, February 2024. This is amazing right there. That high trust environment. Wow, what a change in your culture that you can see just by building those trusting relationships. And remember, people don't get burned out because of the job that they do. They get burned out when they forget why they do it. Okay? Trusting relationships create a sense of camaraderie, support, and reliability. Team members are more likely to seek help, provide assistance, and collaborate when they trust and communicate effectively with each other. All right? Wow, this is amazing right here. I think we can do it, y'all. I think you can do it. I believe in you. You've got this. One last thing I want to share with you, and really good stuff right here. This is called the STAR model. When building effective relationships, when building your school family, focusing on your team, handling conflict, those opportunities for growth. You know, we want to kind of keep in mind, small ego, big mission. It's the power of unity. We are all in this together. Focus on the end game. All right? Look through the telescope. Where do we want to see our school going? What do we want to see in the future? Let go of yourself. You got to be a Q-tip. Quit taking it personal. All right? It's not about you. It's about the entire organization. Be transparent. Tell the truth. All right? I know that the truth might be hard. It might be hurtful, but that's how we grow. All right? Assume positive intent. See the world differently. See people differently. See everyone through loving eyes. Everyone has something to offer the world. There are positive characteristics in every single person that you work with. Shift the focus. Shift the mindset. Look for the good. All right? Create those rules of engagement. Okay, when you do sit down to have that conversation, when you sit down to discuss those opportunities for growth, you know, go back to the handling conflict model that I showed you earlier. You know, the unconscious behaviors versus the conscious behaviors. Set those rules of engagement that during this conversation, we're not going to blame and attack. All right? We're not going to demand and act out. We're not going to medicate, bury it, ignore it. All right. Make those rules of engagement so that you don't get stuck. All right. Focus on how we can notice the trigger. How can we calm? How can we name our feelings? That choice to solve the problem. And how can we move forward? Set those rules of engagement. Respect one another. All right. Create that mutual respect, that compassion, that caring, that trust. And focus on the relationship. All right. Focus on relationship, rupture, and repair. And that's kind of a model that we look at with handling conflict. You got to establish the relationship first, recognize that there's going to be rupture, and then how do you repair? Okay, and y'all, the repair part is the most important part, because every single relationship, whether it's you're with your spouse, your significant other, your coworker, your boss, the children in your classroom, every relationship is going to have rupture, and every relationship is going to have repair. All right? And focus on the repair. But the relationship has to be established first. A real, meaningful relationship. Those meaningful connections have to be there first. All right? Meaningful connections wires the brain for impulse control and empathy. Those meaningful connections have to be there first. Then we can deal with the rupture and create the repair. I really hope y'all enjoyed this training today on growing through the tough stuff. Lots of really good information for you to go back and reflect on. Please share this video with anyone that you feel may benefit from this information. Again, my name is Timothy Smith. Most of you know me as Tim the Trainer. Visit my website, timthetrainer.com. We got a lot of incredible resources for you. We've got online trainings, over 160 online trainings. Most of our trainings have been approved by TechPeds. So make sure you put your personal TechPeds ID number on your portal so that those trainings will be uploaded into your TechPeds account automatically. We also have lots of sample documents, sample resources that you can download for free off of our website. We have an early educator assessment that once again is free, that you can take or have teachers take to kind of see where their skill set is, what type of training opportunities we need to focus on. I have a free training on Words Matter. We are early educators to support our campaign to recognize high quality early educators and the important job that we do. Our 5-day director credential course, we are going on 18 years of teaching the director credential course. We do it both virtually and in person. Check out that schedule on our website. I travel all over the country doing keynote speeches, one of my favorite things to do. So if you are planning a conference or an event and need a fantastic, wonderful keynote speaker, check me out right there. We have a self-paced CDA class that is available on our website. I am a certified instructor for conscious discipline. Love my conscious discipline. Love doing that training. If you would like for me to come out to your school or your organization and do conscious discipline training, you're going to do that directly through conscious discipline and then request me as the trainer. That we would love to do that for you. And I am a certified instructor for the John Gordon Companies, certified in the power of positive leadership, the power of positive teams, and my favorite, the Energy Bus and the Energy Bus for schools. A lot of the information that we shared in today's training actually came from a book that was co-authored by John Gordon. Difficult conversations don't have to be difficult. So I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. A lot of this information today came from that book. Also, I collaborated or included a lot of information from my friends at Conscious Discipline, as well as the Life is Good Playmaker Project, Playmaker University. Lots of good information that I am constantly borrowing from those friends and a lot of my trainings as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed this training. I look forward to seeing all of you very, very soon in the near future. Remember, you can always reach out to me on our website, timthetrainer.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can send me a direct message. You can call me. You can email me. Any questions that you have about today's training, or if you need more information beyond the scope of the training material, we are here for you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day.